Okay. My name is Adam Sokol. I do brand and content and thought leadership stuff here at Orum. The reason that we are all here today is to talk about iOS 26 and call screening. And I wanted to make sure for this webinar that we were able to give you a product standpoint, product point of view, a on the boots on the ground type of a point of view, and then a leadership point of view as well. So I have three fantastic experts with me that I'm gonna let them introduce themselves here, and then we will dive into our questions. As we're going, if you have any questions, please feel free to chat them in. I will do my best to weave those in naturally. Bart, you are the only non-Orumite here, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself first. I feel like that's only fair, so take it away.
Sure. So my name is Bart Bartlett. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DemandZEN. We are an outbound top of funnel pipeline generation company. We were Orum's fifth customer, and we've been working with you guys for a while.
I did not even know that part. That's super interesting. That's amazing. Well, thank you for joining us today. Uh, Catherine, it's really hard for me not to call you KT, which we normally call you here. Catherine, you want to introduce yourself really quickly as well?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And like Adam said, I'm Catherine Tennyson, or by short, I go by KT, my initials. I am the sales development team lead here at Orum. I've been on the team since February and leading the team as team lead since August. Really great to be on here and shed light on some of the perspective that we have here as a sales development team here at Orum.
Just thinking through all the experience our SDRs have, it is wild to me that you have still only been here since February. It feels like much, much longer, and that is a compliment. Excited to have you here as well. And last but certainly not least, Bob, would you like to introduce yourself and why you are also on this call with us?
Sure, yeah. I'm Bob Aspel. I'm the VP of Product for Orum. I've been at Orum for about 18 months. And, as a VP of Product, my job is basically to understand the problems facing our users and work with our technical team to build great features. And in this case, that involved learning a lot about the iOS call screener, understanding how our Orum users sort of wanted to interact with it or were thinking about interacting with it, and then building some great features that allow them to sort of give themselves the best chance possible to get past those screeners and have real conversations.
Fantastic. And I appreciate you being here. And if Bob looks familiar to anybody, you may have attended our previous webinar about iOS 26 as it was about to roll out. And he also wrote up a piece about all the different things that Orum provides you as callers that you can use to kind of get through call screeners in a sense that you can have those connect rates stay as high as they have been traditionally for you and all sorts of different aspects. I'm gonna bounce back and forth between all three of our guests here. As you can tell, they all have different purviews, and so it might not make sense for me to ask Bob about specific cold calls, whereas KT will be the expert there. But first things first, Bob, for people who maybe don't fully understand what's actually happening at a technical level when we talk about call screening, like why did Apple make this change and how is it impacting sales teams calling from platforms like Orem?
Yeah, great question. I think when you think about what Apple is trying to achieve here, they're trying to give their mobile users the chance to process and make decisions about calls from unknown numbers. So if someone calls you and they're not in your contact list, um, you may want to learn more before you choose to pick up or not pick up a call. And the way this has typically worked is you ignore the call and then you look and see if they leave a voicemail, and then you can decide to call them back if you want. But you miss the real-time opportunity to talk to that person. So what Apple has done is kind of flip that on its head and said, instead of waiting for you to leave a voicemail, let's have you leave the voicemail first, and then the person can decide whether or not they want to pick up while you're still on the line. And so a sort of important nuance here, when these calls go to the iOS Apple like Siri screener, they actually will not go to voicemail after. So interacting with this screener, this screening tool is actually your one chance for an impression. And what you say to the screener actually will show up on the iPhone looking like sort of like a text message or like a pop-up notification. And so this is really your chance to get your name and your company's name out there in front of a user on their device in real time. It's really like a live sort of marketing or sales impression. And so extra important for folks to sort of interact with those screeners and get their name out there.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best not to editorialize, but I will say, as the person whose job it is to build brand affinity for Orem, I love it personally because we get that upfront. Katie, I'm curious, when this rolled out, what were the first changes your SDR team noticed? Like, was it connect rate shifts? Was it callback behavior, messaging adjustments? What did you notice?
Yeah, a little bit of everything there, Adam. Honestly, when the update first rolled out, I feel like there was a lot more hype than actual impact for us at the start. The connect rates didn't really nosedive like some were predicting it would when this came out, thinking like, oh, this is going to cancel cold calling forever. That was not the case. What we saw was more of a gradual change, and because people didn't like they had to opt into the new screening feature. There was only a small difference in the very beginning between those who had it and those who didn't. And then over time, as adoption increased, we did start to notice small shifts in connect patterns. And that's when it became a little bit more clear to us as reps that this update was really going to reward the reps who did their homework ahead of time. We made sure that our messaging was really purposeful and that our reason for our call was clear, making sure that there was, like I said, more of a relevant reason for every single call that we had. I think, if anything, we realized that if you thought that spray and pray was a good idea before, this update was probably a humbling experience. It exposed the gap between more generic outreach to prospects and true research-driven calling. So when the reps take the time to understand the prospect's world or have some intentional reason for calling, leading with a thoughtful but concise reason, those were the ones who got rewarded with conversations and then more intentional conversations at that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm curious, Bart, from the DemandZEN side, what were you hearing from your reps on the ground? Like, how quickly did you have to pivot your calling strategies?
So what we heard from our reps was this sucks, and an immediate pivot was required.
Hmm.
We've been an RM client for years, and we're used to being connected with people, right? So it initially connected us to Apple's bot, and that was super confusing for our reps because we weren't, in your product dev side of things. So we were just experiencing it as it came out and was released. And so it required a pretty immediate pivot on our part, and we worked with you guys on a pretty urgent basis to come up with some solutions for it. Interestingly enough, that as we worked through the solutions process and got more comfortable with it, we did see a significant increase in connect rates.
That's I'm really interested, and we'll kind of talk more about that in just a little bit. We have a question from Daniel. Can you give some? This was for KT, but can you give some examples of the calls? We'll get into that in just a moment. I just wanted to. I see I see the question there. I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledge that it's there. We're going to talk about some specifics in just a little bit here. Um, Bob, I'm curious if you can share from a product perspective, like what Orem has done to adapt to iOS 26. What were some of the specific features and signals we're using to detect those calls being screened? How's your team prioritizing fixes, enhancements, and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing that we did here at Orem was, when this feature came out, and there's been a Google version of this out for a couple of years actually. So I'll kind of include Google here because our solution also covers the Google use case, Pixel users. Uh, we adapted our AI voice detector to recognize these screening messages, right? They have predictable patterns, right? It's usually if you leave your name and your reason for calling, I'll try to connect you, something like that. There's a couple of different phrases that they use. We sort of did some research, understood what the phrases were, and added them to our AI voice detector, which has previously been used to say, like, is this a real person or is this someone's voicemail box or is it a dial tree or something else? Um, we added another case, which is this a mobile call screener? And once we've identified that it's a mobile call screener, that allows us to sort of give some options to Orem users. The first option is you could choose to be connected to it and talk. So, maybe you want to try a hyper personalized screening message and thus, please connect me to the screeners and then I will say something very personalized. For example, I was talking to a user yesterday and he's having a lot of success using a screener message that's like, hey, Bart, I've been talking to Steve over at DemandZEN and he said we should connect, right? Like something that like citing another person in the org, very personal, Like I have a very clear reason for calling you. You might want to try that, and then you might want to be delivering that screener message live. Alternatively, you may not be having luck with screeners, and for efficiency to get down your call list, you might want to skip them, right? You might want to say like, you know what, it's 2 to 3% of phone calls, and I'm gonna skip those, or maybe I'm gonna come back to them later. And so you can actually say like, if I identify a screener, skip it. The last thing you can do, and this is actually very cool, we've adapted our old voicemail drop technology to pre-record a screening message. So you could record a basic, sort of slightly more universal screening message. And then whenever we detect that screener, we'll drop that recorded message for you. And then only if you then have success where the mobile user says, okay, yeah, I want to connect to this person, then we'll connect you. And now you're having a live conversation. So I think that's been the biggest sort of like efficiency win. And we've created the ability to have a library of these screener messages. So you may have like, different personas you're going after, or different sort of like sequences in your outbound strategy. And maybe you want different screener messages for each of those. Maybe they have slightly different product focus. Maybe they have a slightly different needs focus based on persona, etc. And the last thing we can do, one of the most powerful parts of Orum is that we have almost 1 billion calls in our database. And so that allows us to do some really powerful stuff with our data. And so what we've started doing now is when we see these screeners, we flag those numbers and say, okay, that's a person who uses the call screener. And so what that allows you to do now is as you're thinking through your workflow, users may like in the past do things like, let me filter to hot numbers and call the hot numbers in a very specific kind of way. Now you could also say, let me filter down to only people that Orum thinks are going to be using a mobile call screener and adapt my strategy to that. So maybe you want to power dial through that list and actually like test out your screener message by trying slightly different things for each person, or you want to try a very personalized message. You could call just those people using a filtered list and really adapt your workflow to that. So definitely a multi-pronged strategy. And we're still sort of working very closely with customers like Bart and DemandZEN here and others to hear sort of like how it's going, where they're having success, and we're adapting our solution in real time, because this is all really new to Orum and it's really new to the whole industry.
Yeah, I think something that's most fascinating and interesting to me, you mentioned almost nearly 1 billion calls that have been made on the Orum platform. A couple months ago, we released the state of cold calling, where we basically analyzed all of that by seniority and persona. And so for people who are in here listening and wondering like, well, how would I determine when I want to turn on this, automated drop, or I want to do it manually? Like, to give you some like anecdotal examples is, if you're calling into cybersecurity versus you're calling into like, maybe you're calling into admins and you want to talk to those gatekeepers because you want to give them some more context. Like, cybersecurity people are traditionally very hard to get a hold of. So maybe you want to individualize each one of those specific call screener notes for, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of Bart, Adam from Orum. Whereas if you're, talking to somebody who you look at your list and you're like, oh, this is a huge connect rate. Like, I'm just going to auto drop that to save myself a lot of time. I'm curious if people are brave enough to put in the chat the things that are working for them versus things that aren't. And I'm curious, KT, from your perspective, leading SDRs, what tactics are actually improving connect rates right now? Like, what's working for reps day to day?
Yeah, of course. Great question. And there's a few things to note here. So first, outside of just, good data enrichment and Bob's team ensuring that the core of our product is yielding high connect rates, we do really try to follow best practices above all else as a team. So for example, I know it was already mentioned, if parallel dialing, make sure you jump right into your talk track the second a prospect picks up. So we all know that hesitation kills momentum on the phone. And transparently, if you know someone on your team is seeing better connect rates than you, get curious and figure out why. I feel like the reps that are actively looking to improve will always find a way to get better. And so, that being said, like day to day, what's really working on the phones is just leading with clarity and confidence. Our SDRs are starting off every single call with a reason why they're calling, whether that's screener or not screener, helping with connect rates, both being very clear and conversational. Each part of the call, as we know, earns the next couple seconds of attention. And so when you sound real and intentional, you get rewarded with a better shot at a live connect. just treat the screener like that first part of the call more than anything. And I guess to add on to that, we've also leaned pretty heavily not just into intent-based messaging, but intentional messaging. So having a reason to call matters, but so does how you deliver that message. The reps who sound confident, natural, and genuinely interested are the ones that are keeping people on the phone. Combine that with consistent call rhythms, testing out different touch points and different data, your connect rates will stay pretty strong across the board, I would say.
I love that. And something for those who may not be available or not be aware, not available. Orum has an AI coaching suite, and we have AI role plays and different things, whether you can kind of practice your pitches and things like that without going into live calls. And I'm curious, KT, for you, how is Orum's AI coaching helping surface what's working under these new conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. Our AI coaching has made it so much easier to actually see what's working in this new environment. In this coaching portal, it will automatically flag like where reps are breaking through objections or connects in tough scenarios. And it helps us pinpoint the why, whether it be tone, pacing, how they framed their reason for calling in their opener. It's all right there in one place, which makes the coaching process a lot more actionable. So instead of guessing, now we really can just quickly identify these patterns behind successful connects and conversations, what's working, what's not, and scale those insights across the team. I think, if anything, this coaching portal has really helped us turn top performer behaviors into more of a repeatable playbook that can be adapted over time in real time. And the best part about this coaching portal, especially as someone who's been a player coach, is one, reps don't have to wait for their managers to analyze what's working for them or what's not working for them. And better yet, as a manager, you do not have to take hours out of your week to analyze patterns for reps one by one now. So these insights are actionable at everyone's fingertips. The reps who genuinely want to improve can take the initiative themselves. It's at, like I said, at their fingertips. You can review calls, make adjustments on your own. It's really shifted the way that coaching is done from being reactive to proactive.
I love that. And I'm about to have a bunch of questions for Bart about some really awesome connect rate numbers. Before I get to that, I have one more question for Bob first. You know, we're fortunate here at our company that, our reps obviously, quote unquote, eat our own dog food. They obviously, our SDRs use Orum to sell Orum. But I am super curious, Bob, like how are all the frontline insights that you're getting? How's that feedback leading into product decisions? Like where have we seen the biggest lift after combining all the data we have and also rep feedback?
Yeah, it's still early on. I mean, I think we're just starting to get the insights on sort of like what types of screeners work and don't work. What we can say is like 2.5% ish of all dials are running into these screeners. Um, and it's important to note that that 2.5% of dials are 100% mobile numbers. So, when we talk to customers, we know that like reaching people on their mobile phones is the most high value activity they can do. And so that makes these calls yeah, in across our entire base, US and international, but most of the adoption is in the US. Um, and what we're finding is like getting through those screeners and reaching those folks is actually really important. And we're seeing people who use our call screener tool are getting through the screeners at above average connect rates. And so if you're looking for extra connections, right, in a world where 6 or 7% connect rate is actually really good, every additional call where you can reach someone out of 100 attempts is really valuable. And so what we're hearing from teams is like taking the time to have a coherent strategy around these call screeners is actually vitally important because it could be the difference between a 6 or 7% connect rate or a 4.5, 5% connect rate. And that's a really big difference.
Speaking of connect rates, the impetus for this webinar was DemandZEN has seen some incredible connect rates connected to call screeners. In fact, Bart, your team has reported like a 2x connect rate in some of these screened environments. Walk us through what you're doing differently.
So, I mean, One, I would actually recommend that everyone, if you're not going to do a personalized response, that you do the recorded response because kind of just skipping them means you're missing out on that connection, right? And so for us, we're calling at scale. We're calling across 40 different programs for different clients. So we are testing the recorded message and we're doing that at scale. The lift that we're seeing consistently is anywhere between 20 and 100%, depending on the list and the clients. For us, the iOS call screener came out on 9:15, and people, because Apple integrated it into the upgrade workflow, we saw pretty rapid adoption. So we've seen more like 5% of, and we call automobiles. So we see more like a 5% hit rate, right? So that was immediate friction to our calling programs. And then you guys work with us and you initially put the skip in, which meant that, we weren't having that opportunity to connect. And then pretty much 30 seconds after you released the ability to record, we started testing that.
I love it. I love how quick you are to the jump there. I will say you mentioned, if you're not leaving a recorded message, you're missing that opportunity. Um, we have data around leaving voicemails that we know if you leave a voicemail using Orem, the next time you call, you increase your pickup rates by 25%. We don't have that data yet for call screeners, but I suspect that if you are leaving a message in a call screener and then you try to call that person back, you will have an increased connect rate. That is just my assumption. That is my hypothesis. We don't have that data yet. I'll ping Bob and some of our data analysts afterwards to see if we can run that data. But I know, Bart, your team is A/B testing messaging and intros to see what's actually getting through to a live conversation. How are you guys doing that, and how are you able to test in terms of like looking at the data about that A/B testing?
Sure. Well, so I figured I'd give some more generic examples just from my personal experience because I thought that that might be more helpful, right? And I'll give you some of what we're testing on a generic basis and some of what I've seen work on a specific basis. But the key is that the iOS call screener is asking you to tell it who you are and why you're calling, right? And your best possible response is to tell it who you are and why you're calling. And honestly, I don't know why so many people are getting that wrong because to me, it seems really obvious. But I've got some examples here of calls I answered and calls I didn't. So, Bob, pickleball. Guess what? I answered that call because I like playing pickleball with Bob, right? But here's actually a really good one because they're selling warranties for kitchen appliances. And it's my name is Brooke. I'm calling on behalf of AJ Madison regarding a contract renewal for his appliances. I have a dishwasher. It's a lemon. I hate it. But I'm very open to that renewal because I want to keep that thing insured, right? It's broken down maybe 5 times in 3 years. So again, who she is and why she's calling. And you're like, it's the car warranty person, right? But in this case, it was the appliance warranty person. And I'm very open to that conversation. So it's like authentically answer the question and you've got a chance to connect. And let me give you some I didn't answer. No, let me smile. Anna Grace, yeah. Here's my favorite. Joey Plush. That was my sales guy calling to try and close a deal. But his name is Joey Plesh, and he didn't enunciate, and he didn't tell me why I was calling. I didn't pick up. Then I looked at the number and I was like, oh yeah, Joey's trying to close that deal. I need to call him back. Right? But again, if he'd actually said, hey Bart, this is Joey Plesh, your sales guy calling because I need you to sign a contract, I'd probably answer it. So that to me is really the takeaway. It's like who you are and why you're calling.
Yeah. And then what data points are you guys paying attention to beyond just connect rate to measure success?
So we look at connect to conversation to meeting set, right? Like we want to go through that whole workflow. But you guys actually told me before this released that with Google, you'd seen an increased connect rate. And honestly, I didn't think it. I thought you were full of it. But then when iOS came out, right, at first we're like, skipping is a decrease in connect rate. Once we were able to record messages, and the messages, even like a generic one that works is, this is Bart Bartlett calling from DemandZEN. I've got a quick question for you, right? I mean, it can be that simple and relatively generic, but that's still authentic, and that increases your connect rate. So again, I was pleasantly surprised by that because we've seen a bump up from any kind of authentic response.
I love that. I will say anecdotally from me, this is why I love leaving voicemails and I hate when people don't leave me a voicemail. If I see the same number call me like 9 different times and you don't leave me a voicemail, I get so frustrated. And same thing with like a call screener. If people keep calling me, I would rather be able to answer the phone because I know who you are and say, Bart, yes, I'm interested, or I'm not interested, Bart, for the love of God, stop calling me. Like I want there to be a resolution one way or the other. So I love kind of the clarification you're providing there. We had a question here, and Bob, I don't want to put you on the spot, but they're asking about basically branded caller ID. They're basically saying, I see new tech that can add my company name with a logo to caller ID. I don't know if you can do logo, but I think probably just name, especially when cold calling. What are your thoughts on this? Does it increase connect rates? I know this is something we've been talking about internally a little bit, Bob, but do you want to, is there any color you can provide about branded ID, branded caller ID, if it helps, if it doesn't, those types of things?
Yeah, branded caller ID is a really cool feature, and you actually can actually have your logo show up. So you could have it say like, "This is someone calling from Orem. Here's the Orem logo." Um, We're still in the early days of testing it. It's quite expensive, actually. So, what we tend to find from outbound teams is that the cost for branding your numbers maybe doesn't isn't justified on an outbound use case. Where we see teams having more success with it is in things like customer success, where you're reaching out to like real customers who will see that logo, know exactly who it is, know it's one of their vendors, and want to answer. But on the outbound use case, the data is still mixed. We actually have some interesting testing going on right now. KT and her team are actually are trying some random numbers within Orm, so we should have some reporting on that soon. But yeah, the literal cost to go to these services and brand the numbers with the carriers can often be like $10,000 or more, and so there is a cost component there. The other part that can be tricky about it is like in Orem, one of the things that some of the things that we do that help people have higher connect rates are, one, we use Boost Connect, which uses a big pool of shared numbers. That sort of like is a very advanced version of what used to be called local presence. And also, when reps have phone numbers that are maybe not performing as well, we allow them to rotate them out and bring in fresh new numbers and like build healthier phone numbers to call from. Um, Both of those kind of go a little bit at odds with branding because you'd have to like rebrand all the new numbers. And if you're using a shared pool of Orem numbers, with that, other customers also may have access to, branding is a bit difficult there. But it's definitely an area we're exploring. I don't have a firm sort of recommendation on it yet.
Yeah, thanks for answering that on the fly. I appreciate that. I was, uh, Pablo, I've got you. Are we from a getting back to call screening in iOS 26? Are we starting to see any clear patterns about like specific personas, area codes, or dial types that are performing better than others?
I think what we're finding is in like business to business cases, using those direct messages really helps. I think Bart said it well, like if you, I mean, who are you and why are you calling, right? Because if you think about outbound, right? Like what you're hoping for is to connect with someone who has some interest in what you're doing. And so when you come up with something very cheeky to try to sort of like trick someone into answering the phone, and then they have no interest in what you're pitching, you're not going to end up with a meeting booked, and you're not going to sort of end up with pipeline. But by being really clear about sort of the problem you're out there trying to solve, right? Like this is Bob from Orem. I'm wondering about like what tools you use to like generate more outbound pipeline, right? When you're really direct like that, the people that choose to answer are self-selecting into like, okay, actually, I am looking at my outbound team right now, and I'm looking at our tools, and so this might actually be a really important conversation. So by being direct and by being very clear about the reason for your call, one, to Bart's point, you're following the instructions and you're sort of like these people who are screening, like that's what they're looking for. But two, you kind of get this sort of like double bonus where the people that do answer will have like a genuine interest in wanting to talk to you and be sort of like well primed to kind of be the type of person that you can convert into a meeting.
Yeah, I think we have data that basically shows like when you get connected through a call screener, you actually have a higher rate of ending up booking that meeting. Because to your point, like I I have the benefit of being in marketing. I am not on KT's side of things where like I need to have so many conversations every single day. But to me, the huge benefit of call screeners is like I know when someone does pick up, there is at least a modicum of interest into what I'm calling about. Whereas a true cold call, I pick up the phone, Bart answers because he's a kind soul, and I say, "Hey Bart, this is Adam from Orem. Do you have 27 seconds?" I wouldn't use that opener because it's outdated and I know that. But if it's completely cold, you're gonna be like, "What is this about?" Whereas if I've given you a message on the call screener and you're like, "Hey Adam, I just heard your call screener. What was the question you had?" Now at least I have an opportunity. There's an interesting question here that John dropped, basically asking for everyone's take on the opener that they're interested in using and saying, "I'm calling to see if your company might want to look at hidden problems in your," and then they have account receivable, account payable processes. My guess is we may all feel slightly different, but I think the kind of collective idea we're thinking here is like, be honest, just be forthcoming about what those hidden problems might be. Bart, I'm going to put you on the spot. I don't know if you saw this in the chat, but what are your thoughts on that opener? And I know that I'm also opening a can of worms to having everybody type in their opener here, but I'm going to risk it. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think anything that's authentic works, right? Like when this first came out, we were just like joking around and we're like, hey, it's your mom, I'm at the hospital, right? Like you're going to get a high connect rate, but then people are just going to be super pissed at you,
Don't
right?
do
So,
that.
yeah, exactly. Don't try that. We did not test that, just for the record. That is untested. But again, it's just like that's what's working for us is an authentic response in line with the prospect's needs.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Katie, what do you think about this opener that John mentioned?
Yeah, I've been spinning my wheels looking at it right now in the chat. So I think one way to make it even a little bit more personalized would be, I know you said like, I'm calling to see if your company might want to look. If you're just using a generic voice drop, perfect. But if you're personalizing it specifically to Jim Jones, I would ask Jim Jones to see if the actual name of the company. If Orem has looked into hidden problems in account receivables and account payable processes, take it a little bit further to make it more personable to the prospect. And I think that that might help even in the slightest.
Love that. Awesome. I have one more question for each of you all. We had about 45 minutes scheduled for this. So if people have other questions, please drop them in. But I have one more question for each of you here. Bob, if teams want to future-proof themselves against further call screening updates, is there anything they should be doing today?
Yeah, I think one, be sure to sort of like explore like the power of Orem and make sure you're taking advantage of the features. Um, but I think what really helps here, it's similar to other outbound use cases. It's giving every single possible connection the chance to be a good connection, right? Like it can be really tempting as an SDR to be on a call and it starts to not go well and just bail, right? But the best SDRs and the best outbound teams try to fight for every single possible conversation. So it's like, the same way when someone's like, hey, I'm busy, I'm about to head into a meeting. If you say, okay, fine, you've lost that connection forever. But if you're like, great, yeah, like, can I just like get two more things from you before you hop into that meeting, right? Like the best SDRs keep pushing. Similarly, when we're looking at screeners, um, it's really important. Like treat every screener as another opportunity to have a great connection. Like give it the time, give it a little bit of energy, like play with different openers. Don't just sort of record one thing and see how it goes. Like record a couple, try tailoring it to personas, try calling them in parallel in power dialing so that you can actually talk to the screener and make it personalized. Like try stuff and really fight like hell to convert these screeners into conversations because I think, this is where sort of all of the old school skills that outbound reps have built up over the years really apply. It's really just about having a dogged determination to turn every potential contact into a contact.
I love that. KT, what's one adjustment every SDR could make this week that would immediately help them get more connects?
Yeah, one adjustment that I think every SDR could make this week to get better connect rates is just use the data that you already have to perfect your process, whether that's data to help with call time sequences, or in this instance, in this webinar, as we've talked, adjust your openers with a screener that's maybe more targeted and personal. And if you don't have the data yet yourself, just lean on what's proven. So whether that be copying your top performers or using insights like Orem's State of Cold Calling report to guide you. There's no need to reinvent the wheel as an SDR. Just use the data to refine what's already working, make it better, and make it you.
Love that. All right, Bart, take us home. What's one lesson your team has learned that you think the broader outbound community should take to heart?
Well, for us, the iOS call screener was an immediate challenge, right? Like it launched on September 15th, and I was knee deep into it on September 16th, right? So I felt like this was a bit of an existential threat from a connect rate. So from my standpoint, it's about adapting, adjusting, but doing it in an authentic and prospect beneficial way, right? Like if you keep that in mind, like we make outbound cold calls, like people aren't always excited to hear from us. But if we focus on the benefits that we're providing the client through the whole process, right, that's what makes it an effective campaign.
Perfect. Really appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm going to send the recorded version of this to everybody who attended and everybody who registered. Please feel free to share it with any of your teammates here. And please be sure to connect with Bob, Bart, Catherine, and myself on LinkedIn. We're happy to answer any questions further. But other than that, thank you, everybody, for joining me today and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.